Hello, this is chapter 1, video number 4. This video is going to go ahead and talk about the types of observational studies and then also the types of experiments. So we're going to go ahead and start with observational studies. Now remember, with an observational study, the researcher is not manipulating anything. The researcher is simply looking for any type of trends that they see with their subjects. So three types of observational studies that we're going to talk about are case control studies, cross-sectional studies, and then finally longitudinal, and sometimes called cohort studies. So three different types that we'll talk about. First off, case control studies are often found in epidemiology when you're looking for patient histories, particularly with medicine. So let's go ahead and take a look here. So with a case control study, we have a group sample, and in this case, these are cancer patients. That is our group of interest. And then we are comparing that to a control group, our comparison group that are non-patients. And looking at this, you're going to take the histories, the medical histories of both of the groups. You're going to compare the histories and then finally draw conclusions. Now, this does a good job at identifying a group that you're interested in and a control group, which we'll talk more about in the experiments. Now, one possible issue is the fact that this is retrospective, meaning that you're asking people to think back on what they did. Now, I don't know about you guys, I can't even remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. So sometimes retrospective studies aren't as accurate as some other studies. But this does a case control study does a good job at comparing these two groups. And yet again, no treatments are given. You're simply taking histories and looking for any type of trends that you see. All right, moving on to a different type. A cross-sectional study is often found when you want to gather a good amount of information about as many people as possible. So with a cross-sectional study, you were just doing it at one time. You're gathering information from different groups or different subjects, and then you were comparing them. So let's say we wanted to do a study on freshman math classes in college. Well, you can give the survey at the end of fall semester to as many college math freshmen as you can, and then you can compare those different groups at that one amount of time. Oops. All right, at that one amount of time. So that is a cross-sectional study. I always kind of think of cross-sections as if you're looking at a cross-section of like a tree or something. You're just looking at it one moment at a time, a quick snapshot to gather as much data as possible. All right, now a longitudinal study, or sometimes called a cohort study, is when you have the exact same group, but you're comparing them over time. There is a really, really good nurses study. I think it happens every so many years, but a group of nurses started out giving tons of information about their medical histories, and then they'll give information the following year, and the year after that, and it's the same group of people. Now, longitudinal studies. First off, these are very, very difficult to conduct. Think about it. If you start with a group of 100 people, it is very unlikely that all 100 of them will still be in the study by the time you get to the end of the study. But longitudinal studies are outstanding at producing high quality information over a sustained period of time. Not so much with cross-sectional. It's kind of hard it's just a quick snapshot. You can get tons of data, but it's kind of hard to see the deeper meanings and effects of things with a cross-sectional. All right, so these are all observational studies, no treatments given. We've got case control studies, cross-sectional, and then finally longitudinal. Now let's go ahead and talk about experiments. And we're going to go ahead and talk about experiments being single blind and double blind studies. Now, this example is rooted in medicine, but you can generalize this to other types of experiments as well. All right, so first off, a single blind study is where the patients or subjects do not know whether they are taking a treatment or a placebo. So you can give randomly selected groups. Some of them get the treatment, some of them get the placebo. They do not know what they are taking. And the reason why this is a really good idea to give a placebo or a control group is so you have something to compare it to. We see a lot um, of current studies of medicine being under fire for not being case controlled, meaning that there wasn't a control given. You can't pinpoint whether or not one thing caused another. So it's always good to have a control group or that placebo group. Now, with a double blind study, this is outstanding when both the patient and the doctor are in the dark. The reason why you might want that is so there is no bias with the doctor. If the doctor or the researcher is anticipating good results with this group and knows that this is a placebo, it might introduce some bias into the study. So you have single blind, where simply the patients or the subjects are blind to what is going on. And then finally, the double blinds, where both the patients and the doctors or the subjects and the data gatherers are blind to who got which treatment. All right, so overall, we've got types of observational studies, and then we also have our types of experiments. And good experiments always have a control group. Because with an experiment, you can determine cause and effect if you have a control group. With observational studies, you cannot determine cause or effect. You can simply report general conclusions that you've found based off of your research.